finally gave the Ringers Philly Crew a podcast. I'm Ben Solak.
And I'm Sheil Kapadia. That's right, just a couple of Philly guys with a new space to fire off some Eagles takes, get caught up in the Sixers chaos, and more.
We'll be coming to you twice a week on Sundays and Thursdays, plus bonus episodes whenever we get breaking news or Philly drama.
Join the fun and follow the Ringers Philly special now on Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day, or hiking, or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Read, Write, Own, Building the Next Era of the Internet, a new book from entrepreneur and startup investor Chris Dixon. If you're listening to this podcast, you know what it's like to be part of a community of fans. You value the people who play, perform, and create for everyone. Well, what if there are more ways to support them, more ways to be a fan? And what if you had even more ways to connect with the teams, artists, and other creators that you love? Even though creators make the internet valuable, how much value do they get for their work? Well, that's mostly up to a few big tech companies. Shouldn't creators get more from the platforms they make successful? More value, but also more say, more control, more ownership? Read, Write, Own explores an alternative future for the internet, one that reclaims control for creators, fans, listeners, and gamers, the people who not only use the internet, but make it useful. Read, Write, Own imagines an internet built by us for us. So order your copy of the book today or learn more at readwriteown.com.
Welcome to the Ringers NBA Draft Show. My name is Kevin O'Connor, and joining me as always, the Ringers J. Kyle Mann. What's going on, Kyle?
Not a whole lot, Kev. It's just this is prime basketball season. I know we said that last week, but there's always something to watch, man. I mean, it's just end-to-end basketball. If you have a ravenous appetite for it, you can be like, if you ever seen that Charlotte's Web movie where Templeton the rat eats so much that his belly's like rolling around? That's kind of like, if you have that kind of basketball.
my hit rate on understanding your analogies and references is like so low. It's probably bottom of the leaderboard.
I was on one yesterday. I made like a first person shooter. I should have made this. This would have worked with you. It didn't work with Sarah and Zach because they looked at me like I was insane. I was just talking about how Zion, like guarding Zion in like any kind of like screen action is like in a first person shooter when you spawn somewhere random, like right next to somebody who's like really good and you're not prepared to defend yourself. That was kind of the comparison I made. That didn't work, but no, I'll try.
That would make sense to me. I like it.
I was going to say this guy's like scheduling his whole life around Warzone. But how's that going, by the way? Are you kicking ass on the new game?
I mean, I've been playing on and off with some friends here and there. It's good to connect with them and play with them. But I mean, ultimately, the game has too many crashes in the early stages here.
Buggy.
Too many little bugs that need to be resolved and all that. But the game's fun. There's improvements over Warzone 1. But
which you were
bugs.
Dominant at, right?
I wouldn't say dominance, but very good. High-level player. Won a Most Improved Player of the Year award from 2020 to 2021. So,
was this an officially sanctioned award, or is this just you?
It's a self-imposed award. I just gave it to myself. It's me.
I'm pretty sure you and Concepcion chewing people up, but wasn't that? I'm pretty sure you all were a duo at one point, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, we had Concepcion and I played a couple of games of Warzone 1 together back in the day. I remember once, me and some friends were playing with him, and we were dead. And instead of buying us back, he bought like a UAV and like a gas mask. It's one of the last times we played with him.
Ruthless, but a competitor, right? Yeah.
Nah, he just hasn't played that game much. But there are basketball games we're going to be talking about. Our first impressions are going to be the first thing we get into today because Cam Whitmore and Nick Smith, 2 potential lottery picks, are back on the court for their respective teams. We're going to start out with Villanova freshman Cam Whitmore, who played over the weekend with a debut against Oklahoma, had only 7 points. 2 of 3 from 2-point range, 1 of 4 from 3, no free throws, 3 rebounds, 3 steals, 0 assists, 2 turnovers. A very basic stat line in 20 minutes. He's 6'7", 232 pounds, 18 years old, top high school recruit. Villanova won the game, by the way. Good wing, Kyle. Uninspiring debut, though. Granted, it was just in 20 minutes.
I was going to say, is that your starting point? Good wing. That's the opening statement about Cam Whitmore. Good wing.
A good wing.
Yeah.
What are your first impressions of his game, Kyle, and how would you describe him to the listeners who have no idea who Cam Whitmore is?
Cam Whitmore is one of those guys. He and Nick Smith are interesting to kind of balance against each other, like player types, because like what they do well now versus like what they'll do, where their developmental path is going to go. Like I think if you watch Cam Whitmore, I think the elevator pitch is this guy is lean but very strong. He looks like he could kind of, I always say, like dress up or down. His body, if he wanted to choose to get leaner, he could. He could get huge if he wanted to. Just kind of I sent one sequence to you, I think, of just a breathtaking athlete, like a lefty, or no, he's a righty, takes the ball off the rim and he got in transition. His like acceleration was wild. But he's like a really interesting balance.
That transition basket you're talking about that he scored, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think he kicked that one out. But I mean, in transition, he's very powerful and very graceful. I mean, he got to the rim and sort of decelerated. The way he decelerated, he really, really stuck out. Like he looked like a different level of athlete, but a little erratic. That's the thing. On ball, he settled a few times for his jumper, and his jumper has been pretty. You had the Cerebro stat in front of you, right? About his in his teenage years, his kind of on and off again shooting touch.
Low 30s from 3-point range, throughout his high school career. And then this summer in the FIBA Americas, he shot 10 of 22 from 3. So high level shooter this summer. Best he's ever shot it, but has never been like a knockdown 3-point shooter throughout his life. I mean, the mechanics look solid. I mean, I'm not sure he's like, he took that step back 3. Everybody's going crazy on NBA Draft Twitter about that. The first, I believe that was his first make that he had in the game, but the shot's kind of stiff, off the dribble. Yeah. I'm not sure that's going to be his game in the NBA, at least in the early stages.
Yeah, I wanted to see him. I sent you another screenshot too of like in the second half. He was just kind of making choices that didn't make a ton of sense because he was way more athletic than anybody Oklahoma had out there. Should have been getting to the rim and drawing fouls. There were a few times where gaps opened up, and Oklahoma's center, his name off the top of my head is escaping me, but it was a guy that Cam should have been able to just challenge and get to the rim easily. Other thing too, something to keep an eye on is his handle development. I always use this term like the width of how wide they can get with their dribble and still be under control. Like you consider somebody like Ja Morant, when he's dribbling the ball, gets super wide and super low with the ball. His is a little, when he starts getting, the wider he gets with it, the more kind of the seams start to show a little bit with his handle. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, he had the ball slip out of his hands on a crossover, I believe, on the left wing in the second half. Are you referring to like when he gets that crossover wide, he keeps it tight, right? Yeah. But he's not creating like a lot of space. Like it looks good, but it's like kind of, it's the type of moves you're seeing him practice in open gym.
Yeah.
But they're not actually creating space for him off the dribble to get to the basket or to step back or sidestep 3 and all that. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, and you see sometimes with younger players, this is why I always think like just playing is just really important. Just playing, just like getting out there and like getting reps against and like getting that like reaction.
Have some fun, kids. Still play.
Unlike Kevin, get out there and play ball since Kevin retired like a coward.
And no more pickup from me.
Yeah. Kevin said, which
injury risk.
Honestly, I probably would have guessed like your style of play that you told me that like just get out there and like just a vicious, like nitty gritty, like little thing kind of guy.
I'd dive on the concrete. I was that guy. Like, come home with scraped elbows.
Yeah,
that was me. I can't play if I'm not embracing who I am on the court.
He can't betray, so you can't evolve, is what you're saying.
No,
or is your game just not really equipped to evolve?
Well, maybe I can. I just, where's the time for me, like full-time, job with the Ringer, to have my friends and my mom here. Where am I going to spend all this time working on my jumper to become a spot-up three-point? I'm not a shooter.
This sounds like an awesome video project that we should do, because I know that there are people who are like trainer or trainer adjacent that come across Ringer NBA stuff. If you want to train Kevin, please hit us up, because I'm invested in your skill development, Kevin. I really want to see you evolve. I want to see you add some things. I want to see you create contact in the lane before you finish. Anyway,
I'd love to be a knockdown shooter, Kyle. I'd trade some good things in my life to become a knockdown shooter. Because then I can play pickup again.
Get Rob Fedor on the phone. We need to get Fred Vincent on the phone. We need to get Kev. I'm fascinated about watching this. If you're willing to shoot on camera, that's always kind of a humiliating experience. I don't even like to shoot on camera.
It's humiliating to record myself and watch myself shoot. That's why I'm solid at diagnosing poor shooters and recognizing that Ben Simmons shoots with the wrong hand, because I might shoot with the wrong hand.
Oh, God. That's like I always say. I'm always really good at spotting teams that are unhappy because they're losing, because that was my whole high school career. I'm an expert at it.
You recognize the signs.
I'm like, oh, yeah, I see what's going on here. He's unhappy. Look, they didn't run on that play. They're pissed at the coach. I'm a master. No, but my overall point is just like the value of just playing, I think, is like a cultivator of feel. And I think sometimes with guys who are really athletic or have odd feel kind of bumpiness in their game. Maybe they're like just you said it, like regurgitating moves in a way that's not really responsive or functional. They're more just kind of like, here's a move, and their defender just stood there the whole time, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so exactly.
Yeah, that matters. But Whitmore, we were talking about body types. I mean, the OG body type, I don't think they're the same type of player. I think Whitmore could be very disruptive, like defensively. I'm going to keep an eye on kind of his steal percentage for the season. How do you feel about him defensively? Or like, do you have a comp that you like for him?
I think the OG one's pretty good. Maybe a DeAndre Hunter. Somebody like that, where he's not, where you kind of see, like with Hunter, when he played at Virginia, there were signs of him becoming a on-ball guy who can do some self-creation. And he can a little bit, but he's not the primary. And I think with Cam Whitmore, and that, granted, it's just our first impression, it's just that first game, we'll see how he develops. I mean, you can see, even going back to high school, he uses some change of pace. He mixes in those crossovers. You can see the potential for him to be a creator, but I don't think that's going to be his primary role. I think the primary role is become a knockdown three-point shooter, defend your ass off. On offense, like my favorite play he made was, I think, second half. It was a backdoor cut. His defender was slightly out of position, and as soon as he recognized that, he cut back door. Called for the ball, catches it, lowers his right shoulder into the recovering defender, creates space for the layup. It's like that's the stuff I'm looking for, right? Cutting, awareness, backdoor lobs that Villanova might call for him, spot up shooting, and all the other stuff. Like, that's kind of like the fluff, right? Maybe long term it develops, but more than anything else, I think you want him to show what he can be as a potential elite level defender, and he was disruptive. I mean, he had that play, reaching into a dribble handoff, disrupting that play, jumping passing lanes. He looked good on defense, I thought, for his first game back. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that he had some lapses where he kind of lost track of the play, but I think it's the speed of the game, sometimes just getting acclimated. That kind of stuff happens with freshmen. Because in college, the execution obviously just goes up a notch, and Oklahoma had some experienced guys out there. But you're right, he reached in there and got some deflections. I think he could be like a deflection king at this level. I think that he really is a top-tier athlete at the college level. But cutting is one of the things. I just like a guy that understands spatially timing those types of things. Like, it really drives me nuts when I see a team and I see a play where a guy sets a screen and doesn't go into the open space or something like that. You got to make the defense move. It's kind of an underrated skill, I think.
You know who's really good at that? Aaron Gordon, which is why he's such a great fit next to Jokic. Like all the guys Denver's added. Bruce Brown, great at that. Aaron Gordon, great at that. Michael Porter Jr., granted he's known as a shooter, bucket getter. Like he's showing he can move without the ball too, right? Like that's what they've surrounded Jokic with. And I think I like the Aaron Gordon comp, just bringing it up there. Aaron Gordon on offense maybe, but a better shooter, you hope. Something like that maybe. Does that work for him as kind of a broad shades of comparison for Cam Whitmore? We mentioned OG, Hunter, Gordon just now. Anybody else come to mind?
Yeah, he's in that chasm between 3-4 where I feel like Aaron is more in the 4 trying to learn to be a 3, and maybe in other scenarios that was rough around the edges, like in Orlando we would see at times. But like you hit it on the head. I mean, like playing with Jokic is a perfect setup for somebody like him. Yeah, I kind of feel like Cam is more on the 3 tilt.
I agree.
Yeah.
So with Cam, the way we're talking about him, if I'm learning of Cam Whitmore for the first time right now, I'm thinking to myself like, okay, this guy sounds like a good mid first round draft pick, and yet he's projected 4, 5, 6. Where do you kind of have him right now on your board, Kyle? How high could you see him go? Is this somebody that has that could drop? Because like I said, if I'm a listener right now, I'm not hearing about self-creation. I'm not hearing about playmaking. I'm not hearing about a guy that's going to run my offense. I'm hearing him compared to guys like OG and Hunter, who are very good players, but they're not leading my franchise.
Yeah, but I mean, it's different year to year, right? Like you're not necessarily going to get the same caliber of player. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but I mean, like OG. I mean, if you knew OG was going to be what he is now, which we've had a lot of conversations about this lately, about properly ranking him within the league. I mean, that's a top 10 pick easy. I mean, he definitely that was a steal at the time. What did he go? 18th?
23.
23.
And because he had the torn ACL. Yeah.
But I mean, just a modern, like switchable, like can guard, could check bigs. I think he has that type of body. If we knew that Whitmore, who I don't know that he's necessarily as defensively, if you weighed him against somebody like, he's bigger than Kaysen, but like identity wise, has Cam embraced it the same way defensively, like as his identity the same way Kaysen has, do you think?
I don't think so, no.
Who would you pick between those two?
I mean, I'd want to pick Cam Whitmore in theory, but in reality, I'm not so sure at this point.
Oh, so you're a little lower. You asked me where I had him. I've probably got him in more 6 to 11-ish kind of range, probably 8. Yeah.
I think we're in the same ballpark there with him. But like, if I'm drafting a guy 3, 4, 5, 6, I mean, there's so many guys in this draft class, like the Thompson twins, Amen, Osar, like he's improving his jump shot this year. Nick Smith, who we'll talk about in a second. You mentioned Kaysen Wallace, who has that defensive ability and he has some shot creation skill. Keontae George from Baylor, who we talked about weeks ago. There's guys who can generate buckets for you. Never mind Brandon Miller from Alabama. We've talked about his playmaking and shooting ability too, where maybe Cam Whitmore slides behind some of those guys. So I think that's going to be the key thing that I'm looking for over the course of the season from him. How does he improve? How good is he really as a shooter? Like what level does he actually reach? Is he shooting 29% from 3? It's closer to his career averages in high school, or is he shooting more like he did in FIBA over the summer where he's, 40+%? Like that's the big question, number one. But 2, also the shot creation aspect. Does that develop at all? And 3, like you said, does he embrace being a defensive stopper, right? Does he really take on that role and treat it as his key thing? Because if he can show that, I mean, then I'd feel very comfortable, depending on what team I am, taking him in the 4, 5, 6 range. But ultimately, right now, I think there's so many shot creators, including Nick Smith, who made his debut for Arkansas, 6'5", 184 pounds, 18 years old, top high school recruit. Last week against San Jose State, 16 points on 6 of 14, 3 of 5 from 3, 5 assists, 0 turnovers. And then he had a big game last night, 22 points, 3 assists, 1 of 4 from 3. Also 6 of 14, got to the line a bunch to get that point total What are your first impressions of Nick Smith, Kyle? He was your guy, first week of our podcast. You had mentioned them. What do you think about his first 2 games so far?
He's still my guy. I mean, he's showing all the things that I like. You're talking about like spatial intelligence and cutting and things like that. Nick doesn't really miss those opportunities. I mean, he just is a natural bucket getter scorer type that can go on or off. And I think that his like spatial sense really lines up well and like bolsters his like, he's just got that funky little bag of like little tricky ways that he scores. I know that sounds like ambiguous, like cop out kind of thing in lieu of being specific, but he just has that floater game. He just has all these ways that he nickel and dimes you with buckets. And I think that like that's why he's going to be an effective player, because we talked about last year, how Keegan stretched the defense. He stretched their attention span because he was such a good cutter. I think Nick has that in his game. I thought last night he kind of had this frantic energy at times. I thought or I forget if it was 2 nights ago or last night, but it's all a blur. But he did kind of have that like nervous, frantic energy. Like, I'm back. I gotta go. And he was just kind of going 100 miles an hour. Did you feel that way?
Oh yeah. Very speedy, right? It was sped up. It seemed like, making some poor decisions as a shooter, forcing some shots, especially as he got into the lane. I like him. I don't love him. I don't think I like him as much as you do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like him a lot. I thought that he challenged groups of defenders a couple times in a way that was a little silly. He just seemed a little eager to, this is a different thing, but I mean, you remember when like Clay came back and he was like really excited to get going again?
Yeah.
We definitely had a couple, like a month and a half where it was just like, Clay, chill a little bit. Like just ease into it. It was kind of, I've gotten a sense that maybe Nick's sitting out. He's just eager to get going and help Arkansas for sure.
How good is he as a shooter though? I mean, we're talking like both those games, 6 of 14 from the field. Is he a knockdown guy? Is he a above average shooter? I think that's my big question with him as a player. Like, how great is this kid actually as a shooter?
I think he's pretty good. I think he's got to let the game come to him, though. I think it's all connected. Like he was just taking weird transition threes. I think if he lets the game come to him, I think he could be easily a 35 to 40% shooter in the NBA. And I mean, I wouldn't put it past him to have some 40s, honestly. I think he's a pretty good shooter, and I expect that to translate. Like off the dribble, I think off the catch, just as long as he plays within himself.
I mean, it's early. We're all able to change our opinions. But right now, I like Anthony Blackmore, his teammate.
Okay.
Anthony Black just strikes me more as this guy is a 10-year NBA vet. Like he's the guy who you watch him. Like he in that same, I think it was, I forget which game it was. It was at UNC Greensboro, where he had this like pick and roll on the left side of the floor. I mean, we talked about like snaking, like showing that feel for the game. He goes from right to left, hesitation move, snakes towards the middle of the floor, and at this point, like the screening big was sealing off Black's man, right? And it's a smaller defender, so Black recognized this, makes a jump pass high where only his teammate could catch it, and it resulted in 2 points. And it was just one of those, this guy's showing off a hesitation, spatial awareness, good playmaking ability, all in one. It's just one of those little moments where you see what he can be as a passer, never mind the scoring ability. Clutch, plays hard, defends. Anthony Black just has the better all-around game to me than Nick Smith. But maybe this is just, he's had more reps. He also got off to a slower start before he did really well in Maui. Maybe Nick Smith does start to slow down and figures it out. But right now, like at this particular moment, I prefer Black over Smith. How about you, Kyle?
I'm still Smith. I just think the shooting, I believe in it more. It's one of those either or, but it doesn't mean I want to push one off and down a trap door and never to be seen again. It's kind of like I just one over the other, instead of, but whatever. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, he does show some, I don't want to don't want to get struck by lightning blasphemy thing because this guy's been so good and I don't believe in him in the same way because of the shooting stuff, but like kind of the Halliburton feel kind of thing, like whenever you would watch Halliburton do simple kind of read react stuff like that. I mean, Black has that kind of herky jerky odd. Somebody posted the other day a really some of his physical traits, that he has some start stop arrhythmic kind of stuff that's interesting, that makes him more difficult to guard despite not being an elite athlete. He has a lot of that stuff. I still prefer Smith, and I think once he slows down, I think he's going to be the leader of that team.
So that's the key thing you're watching for from him this season, that is slowing down. because we know he can create space, right? So it's just, is there anything else that people, when they tune into Arkansas, should be watching for from Nick Smith?
I think the playmaking growth. I believe in
which ties to the slowing down aspect, right?
Exactly. It's all interconnected. It really is. So I believe in the scoring growth. I think that it'll draw attention. I think he'll have opportunities to draw to. He'll have opportunities. He didn't seize them because of his eagerness the other night. And that's just what we're talking about. He's so excited. Just slow down, see when you draw into, see the opportunities. They're both good players, man. Like we said last week. I know we talked a lot about Arkansas already on this pod, but they have interesting players, and he's a good one.
The interesting thing with Nick Smith is the fact that he kind of fits into that Shaedon Hardy style bucket as a scoring player. Hardy is a top 5 high school recruit, goes to the G League Ignite, stinks, and falls all the way to 37. I think it's the right decision for guys to play, especially for Nick Smith. He's got a loaded roster. They could go all the way and win the freaking championship. He should play. But you see, Shaedon Sharpe doesn't play, goes number 7. Darius Garland plays 5 games in college, goes number 5. There are benefits to remaining a mystery. I mean, we've seen players drop time and time and time again after being elite high school recruits and then playing in college. Is there risk for a guy with Nick Smith's qualities to play this year at Arkansas, or is he the type of guy that you feel like it's very safe for him to play in this year's draft class, and there's only something to gain to become maybe the number 3 pick if he does, improve in the ways that you're talking about with his feel and passing and pace of play?
I've thought a lot about this. I think this is one of the more interesting conversations surrounding the draft and development in general. I'm generally always in favor of playing, just because I think reps, I said it earlier in the pod, I think reps, I just
got to get out there and just start shooting.
Well, I'm hesitating. I don't think this person would ever hear this.
Nobody passes me the ball.
Well, I was playing at the gym the other day, and there was this kid who was always in there working out by himself, and he has his phone propped up, and I'm watching him. I kind of just sneaking glances at him watching this workout. And we've had a couple of instances where we've been like, "Hey man, we need another. Do you want to play?" And he's told us, "No, I have to work out." And after it happened the 3rd time, I was like, I couldn't help it. I mean, I'm 20 years older than this kid. I was like, dude, you need to be playing. I was like, you should come play. I was like, you're always over here by yourself. I was like, and then he comes out there playing, he doesn't know how to play. And I was like, I knew it. And he come down and I don't know. Long story short, I'm always in favor of playing, but some guys, you got to think of who.
Let's see Cam Whitmore just pull out the open gym moves, just cross over.
Are you laughing at my audacity to do that?
You're right. He should play. You're right.
I try not to do that, but because what the hell do I know? I didn't play college ball even, but I do believe in playing, and I think that you got to kind of think about who's the most at risk. I guess I was trying to look at the pattern among the guys who did play, who suffered, and it's usually it's guys who come into the college game as super athletes. We pointed out J.D. Davison. Trayvon Duval is another guy that I pointed out that was a really respected recruit. And at the college level, we saw his warts. If you have struggle with the other aspects of the game, if you're super fast but you can't dictate pace with your scoring ability, if all those things are interconnected.
I hated watching Duval.
He was rough.
Can't stand him.
Yeah. And you, Davison was a similar thing, highly rated. I remember the Instagram reels for him were just crazy. Everybody's like, oh my God, J.D. Davison, what they got going on down there in Alabama? And it was and then he comes in and he ended up going to the Celtics at what pick? I forget. It was an afterthought. I mean, he was a flyer.
Duval looked like Dwight Howard when he shot the ball.
Yeah.
So bad.
And when Duke got him, I was like, oh man, this team's going to be tough. And then it just didn't work. But I think things like that are going to get exposed, your lack of ability to shoot the ball, your lack of ability to have respect on the ball. If that gets exposed, you're at risk if you play. And then there's just feel and general feel. Brandon Boston kind of looked rough because of his lack of feel, because of his if he hadn't played, I think he would have gone a whole lot higher. I think about Skal Labissiere, What are your memories of like what worried you about Scout in college?
Well, I was excited to watch him in college, first of all. And he had just no feel. He didn't know how to play. He looked like he was just playing by himself for 18 years, like your friend at the gym.
God, dude, if you watched video of him like in an empty gym, like coming off, I remember the combine, he was like coming off of these curls in a drill and like shooting the ball. He had the prettiest jumper, the prettiest mechanics. It was just like, good Lord, who is this guy? But then you got in the college game, like you didn't know how to play. So those guys are really at risk. I think that the landscape's different. Tell me if you agree or disagree with this. I think the landscape is different today, though, where we can come to correct conclusions, I feel like, without the college sample. Like even if there's mystery, like Sharpe, I feel like his tape was really strange. But if somebody like me, and I don't think this was difficult to see. It was, I feel like somebody doing this, like just that's not a real scout, can watch the tape and kind of get a pretty good idea. I don't know. Does it lower the need for college? Does it really matter for somebody like Sharpe or for like Garland? Because I feel like Garland probably would have gone there regardless. He probably would have gone in the same spot either way. Don't you think?
Probably. Yeah, I would think so. That Garland would have. Maybe he bumps up his stock a little bit. Maybe he goes to 4 or 3 instead of 5. But I think for the most part, yes, you're right. Like you can get a feel for who a guy is by watching them play in FIBA or EYBL and their high school video. Like there's so many different types of competitions and situations and environments and roles that guys are plugged into.
What about Jalen Johnson dropped. I feel like if he had played, he wouldn't have gone that far down. I mean, a lot of times it's like things that orbit them, like, wondering about who they are as people, worrying about that. I know like the more Kuminga played, the more people worried about him. Do you think he would have had a chance to get the top pick if he had skipped playing in the G League Ignite?
Probably. Yeah. I think you might be onto something with a guy like Kuminga, because so much of him and the whole reason he even went number 7 for that matter is the fact that this guy is 6'8", long, great athlete. If only he improves as a shooter, right? If only he can do that. Whereas playing in the G League, you kind of saw the feel for the game and some of the poor decisions and some of the blind spots on defense. Like that all popped up seeing him play for the Ignite that year. But he still goes number 7. I wonder how high he would have went otherwise. I don't. If he doesn't play it, does he go ahead of Barnes at 4? I don't think so. Ahead of Suggs at 5, maybe.
He might
depending on. I can't imagine he would have gone any higher than 5.
I think it would have been in the conversation though, because Suggs really rose during the college year. Remember, and Barnes kind of. I don't know. They were always kind of neck and neck, and I think the upside play with Kuminga always made people kind of nudge him ahead of Barnes when they were high schoolers. And then when he reclassed, I know, but it was the same thing. I just think if there was any pattern, maybe this is something I could write about or do a video about someday, but if there was any pattern, I feel like exposure of lack of feel is like one of the damning ones that really, like, if you can't play, but, it's that it's that don't play and be a hero or like play long enough to become the villain if you're in that situation. Like Sharpe, there was a little worry about that with him, but I don't know. We talked about Sharpe last week, but that would be kind of my feeling. And so to circle it back, no, I don't think Nick Smith is at risk because I do think his feel is pretty good.
I'm with you there, Kyle. We'll take a quick break here and then come back and talk about a deep sleeper.
Deep sleep. Hopefully nobody's going into a deep sleep listening to me talk about Scalabissier.
All right, Kyle, everybody's up from their nap after Scalabissier aside there. We're going to try out a new segment here called Meet and Greet. It's going to be about a deep sleeper prospect, Kyle, that you feel like NBA fans listening to this podcast may have never heard of. It's an NPC, a made-up name. It might as well be. But soon they will realize that this player is somebody they should know. So who are you introducing us to today?
I'm going to introduce, now, the hardcore draft people have been chattering about this fella for a little bit. This guy's from Waukee, Iowa. His name is Tucker DeVries. He is a 6'7", really mobile shooter. He's a sophomore at Drake right now. He's averaging 21 points per game, 6 rebounds, 2 assists per game, but he's shooting 45% from three. Now, if I was going to give you the what I expect, when you watch him, or this is kind of the situation. When you watch him at Drake, he's on ball. He's at a lower major school, whereas he probably wouldn't be doing that. It's a little bit of the Baylor Shireman thing, but he's a different player. He's kind of he legitimately has like NBA speed mechanics. I think he'll probably have to speed it up. Everybody does when they go to the NBA, but shoots the shit out of the ball, man. I mean, he just has a beautiful jump shot. And the fact that he is on ball a lot, I think is going to be could be a potential separator for him going down the road, as it's an area he could expand to. But I expect him to be a spacer in the way that a Kispert, a McDermott. I know I'm going to rattle off a lot of white guy names here, but I think he's...
Just keep going. Duncan Robinson?
Duncan Robinson. I mean, he's a guy that doesn't have a super amount of boogie off the dribble, but but more than a Duncan Robinson. Did you enjoy the chart that I made for you?
Kyle put a chart in the document, and there's a y-axis and an x-axis. On the y-axis, at the top is can handle, and at the bottom is can't handle, and on the x-axis is on the left, low shot mobility, and on the right, great shot mobility. And, you got Bojan Bogdanovic in the upper right quadrant, can handle.
He's not in the far upper. It's just he's in the upper right quadrant.
Yeah, he's in the upper right quadrant. And then in the bottom right quadrant, you get Doug McDermott and Duncan Robinson, players who don't handle but have great shot mobility.
Yes.
Where does our guy Tucker DeVries fall on this outstanding specialist with size chart?
He could end up just above Doug McDermott. I don't know that Bojan kind of developed it as he went. I think Bojan's on-ball stuff's a little underrated.
Bojan's a really good player, dude.
Yeah, he's
a really good player. Way underrated.
But you'll watch him in the dribble sometimes, and I'll just be like, man, we just don't. You never really got to see him do it as much in Utah. He was such a off-screen mover, spacer type. I think that Tucker, I think, is going to need the table set for him probably for the first little while. But I definitely think he's somebody that you could run off of screens, and he's not so incompetent that if you crowd him, he's going to be able to go off the dribble and make simple passes. I think he looks like an NBA shooter, man. I really do.
So I was looking at his numbers. He shot 33% from three last year. According to Cerebro Sports, the competitions that they have in their database, he shot mid 30% as well throughout high school, but he shot way over 40% at his high school. What level is he really as a shooter? What's the difference between this year compared to last year? I mean, is he actually this elite level shooter? Because he looks the part. Everything I watch from him, he looks like a knockdown guy. Contested, open, coming off of screens, pulling up. I mean, that hasn't made a difference so far this year at Drake.
I think the variety of ways that he's getting them is the thing that's encouraging me the most. I'm like you. I'm really trusting my eyes, which is a really egotistical thing to say, but I mean, it's me. I trust me. No, I just, you look at the touch that he has, the ways that I haven't compared the samples. I haven't compared what he missed last year. And that's something that I'll probably do at some point. I know I will, but the ways he's getting them I got watching some pickup game that he played because I just wanted to watch him casually shoot the ball. I think that he could probably hover around that low 40s, in shooting in the NBA. Is he going to be a top, a lottery pick? Probably not. I mean, he's a guy that
late first.
I mean, Kispert went 14th, right? Or where did he go? Yeah. So
14,
it's possible.
15, something like that. Yeah.
And he was older. So, I mean, it's definitely possible. I think he's just a guy. He projects as a specialist, but we'll see how it unfolds.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Nothing.
We need that.
No. I think every team could use a specialist. I'm sure the Wizards right now, I mean, I was taking Kispert at 15, the right choice. I don't know. I mean, the guys drafted behind him, Alperen Şengün, you'd probably rather him. Yeah. Trey Murphy, you'd probably rather him.
Big yes. That was just thinking about me whiffing on that one.
Yeah, I mean, Trey Murphy looks awesome.
Do you remember what I said to you about Trey Murphy versus Zaire?
I don't remember, no.
I'm at the point where I think that taking Trey Murphy over Zaire would be malpractice. Strong statement. I was trying to dig in, but anyway, Trey's really good, just to your point. He's a really good player.
I mean, Memphis probably would be feeling some regret right now too, right? Imagine if they had Trey Murphy on their roster instead of Zaire Williams. Granted, Zaire is a very good defender, athletic player. He's got some upside. Trey Murphy's like shooting the hell out of the ball, man, for the Pelicans. Like you mentioned, like the shot diversity that you see from DeVries at Drake. Trey Murphy, same thing. Like he can spot up. He can hit a one dribble pull up. He can hit those side dribble jumpers. He can come off of screens and handoffs. Like this dude is a weapon at 6'9".
Yeah.
It's such an important role player for them. Oh, he looks huge.
Doesn't he look bigger? Some guys look bigger.
Yes. When I interviewed him, like two things. When I did my story on the Pelicans for The Ringer about a month ago, Trey Murphy, I interviewed him after a Pelicans practice. That dude looks like he's 7 feet. Like he just feels like he's 7 feet tall, right? And when I interviewed Larry Nance, he says to me how like he plays center for them. But oftentimes, like when he gets in the elevator, he's like near Trey Murphy. He doesn't want to get near him because he feels so small. So like, and it's the truth. Like Trey Murphy is huge, dude. And what a great year for him too. When Ingram's been out or Zion's been out, his ability to step up and take on more of a role. He's had like so many 26, 25 point games for them this year. I love Trey Murphy, man.
Well, tying him to this, I mean, aside from our just love for Trey Murphy, I've come around. I ate some crow on that, but I didn't think he'd be bad. I just like I looked at his role in college and what he did and what he did well. I thought it was like, I was skeptical of what he could do as like a self-creator, but you don't want to over-scrutinize that because some guys are just going to be sort of self-creators and they're going to be like, have the table set for them, and that's fine. Like, you don't want to just always prioritize like creation at the expense of some guys are just great specialists and they're always going to specialize at a higher level than the other guy could get to in their upside as a playmaker, if that makes sense. But I think Trey, I don't know that I would put DeVries at that level. I think he's somebody that could support, space and add chaos and screening and things like that in these like movement-based, screening-based, cutting-based offenses that we're seeing more and more of. He fits that bill because he'll draw respect with the shooting.
All right, let's move from the guy nobody knows, Tucker DeVries, but now you do, to the guy everybody knows with our weekly Wemby on Victor Wembanyama. Since our last pod, he's played 2 games, 32 points on 12 of 20 last week, another dominant performance. But then Mets 92 actually lost on Tuesday. One of Wemby's worst games that he had. He had only 15 points on 14 shots, 6 rebounds, 3 blocks, and an L.
They got whooped, man.
Wemby falling out of the lottery now, Kyle?
I hate to say it, but doubt is creeping in.
Is Bol actually better?
Let's put a pin in that.
I know you love those comparisons that are everywhere right now. You love them.
Adore it. No, I like the team that they played. I believe it's Rowan. I don't know how you would pronounce that. They have a lot of like former college like D1 guys on their team, and they came out. I was watching the game, and they came out ready to. They really punched them in the mouth. Like they have a guard, Stephon Moody, who played in the SEC, and it seemed like I had to go back and look. I was like, does he have something against Tremont Waters? Because he made Tremont Waters play a terrible game, and Moody was a good guard at Ole Miss. I don't know if you remember watching him, like 5'10", kind of a shooter, kind of the Kimba mold type guy. Do you remember Stephon Moody? Did you get to watch? That's a deeper cut. He almost like ended Kentucky's undefeated season in 2015 because he got super hot at Rupp. Interesting player. Anyway, but that game, they came out and just kind of Silvio De Sousa, who played for Kansas. I don't think much of it, honestly. But Wemby did some of the typical kind of stuff. He blocked Moody at one point in transition on a 3. I sent you a screenshot of his hand.
Oh, that's unbelievable. Like the shot is like 6 feet out of his hands.
And Wemby's, there's like, you can see his hand above the ball. Like it's not like he's like eclipsing it. It's like he's over it.
That pull-up 3 he hit was crazy after the block. And then he's like clapping his hands, calling for the ball. And then he just isolates and hits a side dribble 3-pointer. Oh my God.
Yeah.
He still had some of those moments, even in a bad game for Mets 92, which speaks to his greatness as a prospect. Even on an off night, he still does like these wow things on the court that positively impact his team. Bill Simmons tweeted this morning about how he thinks the Bulls should tank. Michael Pina wrote an article a couple weeks ago in The Ringer about that. One of the key things here for the Bulls is that their pick is top 4 protected this year. Otherwise, it goes to the Magic. So there's risk in them pulling the plug. but they will be able to keep their pick, even though it goes to Orlando. And if they do keep their pick this year, it would become top 3 protected the following year, going to the Magic. About a month ago, I said, oh, maybe this is like early. Well, maybe the Bulls should think about it. I feel like we're progressively moving towards the point that we're getting it's December 7th as we record. Trade season really kicks off December 15th. We're nearing a point now where you're going to have more of these conversations about will they or won't they tank? And I like, there's a very clear bottom 5 in the NBA right now. Orlando's 5-20. They're absolutely horrific despite having some very nice young players. San Antonio has lost 11 in a row, lost 16 out of 17. They are absolutely
free-falling.
Yeah.
Free-falling.
Oh, my. Yeah. Detroit, 7-19. Charlotte, 7-17. Houston, 7-17. And then Chicago at 9-14. They're 5 games back from the worst record. They're only 2.5 games back from a playoff spot. They're one of those teams that they could go either direction right now. A month ago, I posed a question in my weekly column on The Ringer. Maybe they should think about it. Like, this could be approaching that point. Since then, we've had Zach Lowe say the Lakers have talked internally about a DeRozan-Vooch trade. We've had Woj come out and say that perhaps they're going to be a team that's everybody's going to be watched. Will they pivot? Do some of their players become available? We have Bill Simmons talking about it on his podcast, tweeting about it. Where are you at with Kyle with the Bulls? Should they just trade everybody, blow it up, and go all in on becoming one of the Wemby teams?
I think the thing that I zero in on is, a year and a half ago, or I guess it was even just a year ago, when we were talking about the Bulls had put together something finally that made sense. Like everybody was really hard on Zach LaVine for a long time, comes from Minnesota, recovers, improves, gains all kinds of respect. We're like, hey, Zach LaVine, man, pretty good player. I've been hard on him. And then they supplement him with things that made sense. They bring in DeMar DeRozan, they bring in Lonzo Ball. Suddenly you have this 3-headed monster that looked awesome. They had guys that could close games. The question, though, is, and I remember the conversations, maybe you and I even had them around the time, were they actually close at that point? And the point that I want to make here is just that, like, they had defensive questions, obviously, with Vooch. I assume if Vooch got traded to the Lakers, he's coming off the bench for that team because spatially he doesn't totally make a lot of sense. But I don't know that they were necessarily as good as they got. I don't know that they would have ascended beyond the powers in the East. I don't know that they would have had the superstar power. So now we come to everything has fallen apart. They're in the middle in a way that feels nauseating. Do you agree with that? Like, I don't know that the upward mobility is possible based on also like the guys they've drafted. I lean towards, it's probably time to try something else. What do you think?
Undoubtedly time to try something else, I think, with the Bulls. I mean, listen, I was in support of the Vooch trade when that happened. And part of the reason why I was in support of it was because I felt like with LaVine, he was getting better. And I had belief in Patrick Williams. I thought by now Patrick Williams would be much, much better than he was as a rookie. He's not.
Still believe? What's your belief temperature? Cool?
I don't know.
Hot?
I don't know. It's pretty cool. I mean, I think he's going to be a solid role player.
Mm-hmm.
He can shoot some spot up threes for you. He can defend, but I mean, he's okay.
Did you see where he said, I'm pretty sure, I saw it was from an account. I got tagged, one of the guys that cover the Bulls, but he said he still thought that he had what it took to become a superstar in the league. What do you feel about that confidence?
I don't know. I mean, confidence is nice. It doesn't mean that it's a reality for him.
Yeah.
Like the creation aspect just hasn't developed for him. And maybe that's due to the fact that, DeRozan and LaVine and previously Lonzo Ball, had possession all the time and he hasn't gotten those reps. But I just don't think the ability's there. And I thought it was very important for him to turn into that for this to work. And it just hasn't. And now you're at a point where Vooch is one of the worst defensive centers in all of basketball. Like you think about what Brook Lopez turned into for Milwaukee. He's turned into a DPOY candidate with a lower offensive usage. Vooch has not gotten better on defense than he was in Orlando. He's going to be a free agent next summer. DeRozan can be a free agent in 2024. Lonzo's career might be over, unfortunately, if that knee injury is to believe to be as bad as it is. Like, he signed through 2025, and then LaVine's going to be making nearly $50 million through the 2027 season. And LaVine has fallen off playing next to DeRozan because DeRozan has seized that number one role. And LaVine, like, he got better for a while on defense. He hasn't sustained that. I just think the Bulls, unfortunately, they tried to accelerate things, and it was a worthy risk trading for Vooch. But boy, oh boy, I'd much rather have Wendell Carter and Franz Wagner right now. If I were the Bulls right now. It'd be a younger team building organically rather than going the way they did. Like, it created some fun moments. DeMar DeRozan had so many game winners last year, so many clutch moments, and that's all cool and all. But ultimately right now for the Bulls, there's no move they can make this year to get themselves anywhere close to the level of, forget about Boston, Milwaukee, the clear top two teams in the NBA, in my opinion. They're not going to be able to match a Brooklyn, a Philly, even if Miami gets right. Like what can they do to get to that level? Can they even be more competitive? Like, they can't be better than Cleveland.
Yeah, Cleveland's good, dude.
Can they be better than Atlanta? Atlanta has their own issues too, for that matter. But can they be better than what their best version is? I just don't see the path for the Bulls. Whereas if they become the team that says, you know what, we're going to pull the plug on this, yoink it out, right?
Yoink it.
There's going to be a lot of teams that want DeMar DeRozan.
For sure.
It's going to be like Vooch, despite some of his issues, you put him next to AD, allow AD to play the four more often over the course of the season. If you're the Lakers, that improves your wing defense while also still having rim protection. Vooch adds offensive spacing, a little bit of, little new element on the perimeter with a big man with his kind of handoff actions and all that. I don't know. I just think there's a lot of teams out there that would be lined up for a DeRozan or a Vooch or a LaVine as the piece that they feel like can put them over the top. Never mind if they were to say, hey, we'll add Caruso in there. Well, you want Lonzo Ball with his long-term deal? We'll take one less first-round draft pick in the deal, and maybe he'll come back. But we get off that long-term money. I just think the Bulls, it needs to happen soon, though, right? Because those other teams we mentioned, Orlando, Charlotte, Houston, San Antonio, Detroit, they're going to separate themselves at some point. December 15th is coming fast, man.
Yeah. Yeah. They're separating themselves in the fact that they're just falling out of reach, downward separation as opposed to upward. You want to fail fast. It's kind of a thing. It's hard to balance patience. I think if you have younger players who are developing, maybe it's easier to be patient. I heard Ryan and Bill talking about like being patient with Tatum and being patient with Brown. And I just think in this situation, you don't want to get in a scenario where the sunk cost fallacy kind of comes into play, where they're like, well, we made this move, we did this big thing. This is a chance to reset and kind of pick your pieces. We talked about they have some guys that maybe they could serve two purposes at the same time here, where Patrick Williams needs some more on-ball stuff. Kobe needs some more. Ayo needs some more. That's a scenario where you're going to lose a lot of games if you do that. And I just think you want to be able to restart quickly, and this is a chance to do it. I think it's lining up because, like you said, they have players that are valuable that teams are going to want. Prey on it. Seize that opportunity.
All right, Kyle, last thing here today. Let's go to the TV guide, the game everybody should be watching this week. It's got to be Alabama-Houston on Saturday, right? It's got to be. Number 8, Alabama. Number 1, Houston. National TV game on ABC on a Saturday. No excuses. Got to be watching this one.
It's going to be potentially an ugly game. That's what I would say, because on the season, Houston, their schedule's kind of weak, but they've only allowed, the highest point total they've allowed is 56 points. Dude, they defend their asses off. I know we always say that when we talk about Houston. It is hilarious to me to see how bought in they are, but this is going to be a game that's going to really, we're going to kind of test the mettle of, we're talking about Brandon Miller's like handle and things like that. Like, this will be a good tape specifically for him. I just think it's going to stress him in some ways that'll be interesting for the draft. I don't think we should overreact to it, but it's going to be a good game, man. Houston, just, if you like defense, good Lord,
For sure. This is a great game to be scouting Brandon Miller, and he has been great, last couple of games. 5 of 15 from the floor against UConn, 4 of 21 against UNC, 5 of 11 against South Dakota State, 39% at the rim this year, not doing a lot inside the arc. We've talked about that with him. So this was a a great test on the Houston side of things. Terrence Arsenault, a wing coming off their bench, 3-and-D guy, worth watching, 6'5", 35% from three, very active on defense. Maybe he'll get some, switching opportunities against a Miller. That'd be cool to watch.
Hugely disappointed he's not the son of Harold, the show Arsenault, by the way. I don't know if you remember him. Weber State. That's a way back reference.
I'm whiffing again.
When I saw Arsenault, I was like, please be his son. It's not Harold Arsenault's son. Sorry, everybody. Sorry, old people that know what I'm talking about.
Marcus Sasser, a guard, senior, had turf toe as a junior. Might have been a first round or, second round draft pick. He's solid, 30% from three, 82% from the line, more of a shot maker. You'd like to see him improve his efficiency. Jarice Walker, we mentioned him in the first week of the show as the Mark of Charks, a guy that our good friend Jonathan Charks would have loved as a prospect. How has Walker been so far this season after our first mention of him before the year began?
He still physically, defensively looks great. I think that some of the we come circle back to this over and over. Take a drink. If you talk about self-creation, you'll be blind drunk if you listen to the show. It's so important. Walker off the dribble has looked a little uncomfortable. He kind of is coming into his own on that one. I told you at times he had some plays where he reminded me of Alex Poitras, where Poitras would make these, and I know that made you shudder. Alex Poitras gave me an ulcer at times when he played at Kentucky, but struggled off the bounce, but he would do these incredible athletic, gap closing plays. Walker has had a little bit of that lately. He's just been a little shaky off the ball. He's very upright and stiff, his shoulders like a truck, but just a little shaky lately off the bounce. That's what I've been noticing lately.
I'm looking forward to it. Be a fun game on Saturday. That's at 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific on ABC. So a game on everybody's got it.
Prime time.
Tune in easily. Alabama, Houston, 2 top 10 teams with a bunch of NBA draft prospects. Kyle, you got any plans this weekend? What do you got going on?
I'll be watching some basketball.
That's it? Just watching basketball?
Hanging with the fam,
Nice.
Things like that. Might go on a little date with my wife. I don't know. We'll see.
After Houston, Alabama.
After Houston, that might
yes.
maybe we'll build the date around Houston, Alabama. No, she hates basketball and wants nothing. I even asked her one day. I was like, would you ever be interested in pretending to like basketball? And she was like, no. So that's not happening.
I appreciate that honesty. I'd rather that honesty instead of an effort to like something that I don't actually like.
It's not a problem for us.
That's not sustainable.
Yeah, for sure. It's never been a problem for us. It's nice to have some compartmentalization.
For sure.
You like that. I like that. No, what do you get into? Warzone? What you doing this weekend?
I'll be at the Houston Alabama game. I'm going.
Oh,
I'm going.
No
to
way.
it, baby.
Really?
I'm going to go to it. Yeah.
Where's it? Where's it being played? Is it being played?
It's in Houston. So I'm going to be interviewing some of those prospects on Friday, the day before the game, trying to work ahead on some NBA draft guide stuff, which should be launching in January. That's the plan. I believe it'll be launching early, mid-January, something like that, with some number of profiles. So working ahead on that, and I'm trying to get Brandon Miller too. I'd like to talk to him, get a feel for him, and talk to him about some of his weaknesses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Be honest. You're going to Houston because of the reputation for its adult establishments. That's why you're going, Kev. It's not the game.
I have never been to a strip club.
I haven't either.
I never have.
I haven't either.
You
I had
haven't
a sheltered upbringing.
Seriously.
It's a goody. I love it. We're confessing this. How did this happen? No, people are always shocked when you say that. I haven't. I just haven't had any interest in going. I don't know. I just,
never have. I'm not saying I wouldn't go. It's just that never happened. Yeah. I wanted to go to a club one time. But in 2011, I organized a trip to Montreal with me and my friends, and I wanted to go to a club one night, and none of them wanted to go. And I went out on my own and kind of just walked around Montreal.
Yeah,
and they ended up going to a club that night
without you.
Yeah, without me.
That's lame. Hold on, wait a minute. Hold on.
I was asleep at that point in the room.
You wanted to go. They said no. You went out.
They wanted to go to a bar to watch hockey instead. And I was like, you know what? We're in Montreal. We should be doing something different than we ever usually do. I'm just going to go out on my own. And I went for a walk. It was it was cold, obviously. It's Montreal on New Year's Eve, or near New Year's Eve. And I just went for a walk on my own, eventually fell asleep in the hotel room and knocked out. And I slept through whatever calls came through that they said they were going to a club. They
did tell you.
So yeah, they let me know. Yeah, I was just knocked out at that point.
Yeah. I was curious. I was going to ask you about
I'm glad they went.
I'm endlessly fascinated that we ended up on strip clubs. I was curious about your Kevin Fest, your Instagram music festival.
Yeah, you kind of like the Spotify rap thing that went viral a couple weeks ago on
well, I didn't realize
media.
that it was generated by your taste, because when I saw some of the lineup, where people were in the lineup, I thought it was interesting, because on Tuesday I noticed you had Father John Misty.
Well, for what it's worth, for the listeners, you're referencing what is like a Coachella music poster with artists listed with the big font to the small font. And it's generated based on how often you listen to these artists, I think, or some type of algorithm like that.
Sure. And I think it's the thing. It's like how old you are, basically, by the first. It's sort of like an eye chart for festival posters. The highest line you can see is your age, basically. So if you get to if you don't know any of them all the way to the top, you're really old. No, I was just curious that you had the Beatles, supporting. I love Father John Misty. I just thought it was interesting that they were that late in the order.
The Beatles with the small font, weren't they?
They were.
Well, we could only book the Beatles for a 3 p.m. slot. Apparently, to bring back the dead, they can't come out for a 9 p.m. slot.
Oh, okay. I see. I didn't realize there was supernatural, that kind of shaman stuff.
Same with Hendrix. That's why Hendrix is on at 6.
But it's very you. I feel like if someone had told me, okay, the headliners are Pink Floyd, Father John Misty, and then Muse on Wednesday, I bet you if someone threatened my life, they were like, if you don't guess this, you're dead. I could have guessed that it was you.
Really?
The Pink Floyd. I don't know. I just knew, the Muse thing is just such a funny, I don't know. It's just a funny turn. No, you got a diverse lineup here. I was impressed with it. It's good. A lot of variety.
I'm very happy Leanne La Havas made it on that list. She's my number one celebrity crush.
I was going to say, is she on your Dua Lipa, your celebrity
I would marry her today list? Yes.
All right, folks. You heard it here first. Glad we got that covered.
Well, that's going to do it for another episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Jessie Lopez for producing. Please do us a favor. Follow us, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Pass along the link to a friend who likes the NBA draft as well and might enjoy the show. Give us a 5-star rating. It really does help us out. Thank you so much, Kyle. Have a great rest of your week, man.
You too, buddy.